Keep it rolling here, guys. In the NFL, Joe Flacco will open the season as the Browns starting quarterback. The team announced yesterday Flacco will star in the team's preseason finale against the Rams at home Saturday. Head coach Kevin Stefanski said he would treat the game as a dress rehearsal for the regular season. Flacco did not play in Cleveland's first two preseason games. So taking a look at that crowded quarterback room there, Dillon Gabriel led the Browns on 3 scoring drives this weekend. Shedeur Sanders did not play because he's dealing with that oblique injury, but had 2 touchdown passes in the Browns' first preseason game and put everyone on notice. Canty, how important is it for Shedeur to play in the preseason finale when we talk about his future?
It's absolutely critical because the Cleveland Browns brass needs to be comfortable enough with Shedeur as their backup quarterback to move on from one of the guys that they have in their room. Now, it feels like the odd man out would be Kenny Pickett. He's a guy that they traded for this offseason. But on no uncertain terms do I think it's good business for the Cleveland Browns to carry 4 quarterbacks into the season. You have Joe Flacco, who is the steady veteran presence, but the objective for the Cleveland Browns this season should be to figure out what they have in these young quarterbacks, that being Shedeur Sanders and Dillon Gabriel, in order to determine how they proceed with the quarterback room moving forward, knowing they have 2 first-round draft picks in 2026, which is a quarterback-rich draft class. So to me, this last preseason game is an opportunity for Shedeur Sanders and Dillon Gabriel to battle it out to be number 2 on the quarterback depth chart going into the season, which means they're the guy that gets the nod when Joe Flacco gets the hook inevitably.
Fair, but Woody, he is dealing with that oblique. Your thoughts?
Yeah, listen, he's definitely dealing with the oblique, and you know, but that's just part of the sport. Everyone's playing with injuries. No one's 100% at this time of year. And so for me, I think Candy brought up a great point, is that the Cleveland Browns need to figure out who's the number 2. Okay, we know Joe Flacco's entrenched as number 1. Who's going to be number 2? Who's going to be the guy when Joe Flacco, who's, by the way, 40 years old, okay, and inevitably with these quarterbacks, they get injured. Who's going to be the guy that's going to step in and possibly take that? And I think Shedeur, both of those young guys, both Shedeur and Dillon Gabriel, I thought acquitted themselves very well. So at somehow, some way, with the remainder of the preseason, he has to somehow separate himself to become the number 2 guy, because that's the easiest avenue to get on the field when there's an injury at the quarterback position. So I would lean towards, yes, he needs to play in this last preseason game. Not only play, but acquit himself well in order to win that backup quarterback spot.
S.A.?
I'd agree with that. He definitely needs to quit himself well in order to earn that QB2 spot. But I do think that he had a better performance than Dillon Gabriel between their outings. I mean, I thought his performance was more polished. Passes. Dillon Gabriel didn't have anything. He didn't have any turnovers. Dillon Gabriel had 2 turnovers. I pay attention to that as well. These are the things that y'all have taught me over the years that matter significantly. And when we look at the quarterback rating of 106 to a 72, I definitely think that's impressive as well. Now, obviously, he has to show it again because Dillon Gabriel was going up against the Eagles. Shedeur Sanders was going up against the Carolina Panthers, even though they were both facing backups or whatever. We know there's a difference between those 2 franchises in Philadelphia and Carolina, respectively, so I don't think we can ignore that either. In the end, what it comes down to, however, is simply this. You need a definitive number 2, and I got to tell you where I disagree with you, CC. I don't have a problem with the Cleveland Browns carrying 4 quarterbacks. And here's the reason why. Because when you talk about somebody over the age of 40, only 6 quarterbacks over 40 have started double-digit games in the season. Warren Moon, Vinny Testaverde, Brett Favre, Tom Brady, Drew Brees, and Aaron Rodgers. That's about it. What I'm saying is I don't anticipate that Joe Flacco is going to be there for the long haul. He's a security blanket, okay? And to me, when you consider the plethora of injuries that have been happening to quarterbacks, particularly in the age of concussions and what have you, I definitely think there's nothing wrong with having a 4th quarterback as a security blanket. Now, Joe Flacco will start, but we all know he's on a 1-year, $4.25 million deal. He ain't the future. Hell, one would argue he's not really the present. You're just using him right now until you know definitively that you got somebody you're comfortable enough to put in there.
Yes.
They got to make a decision as to who that QB2 is going to be. I think it's going to be between Shedeur and Dillon Gabriel. But once they're sure of that, I think you go from there. I got no problem.
Hold that thought, because I want Candy to have time to respond.
Yeah, security to what end, Stephen A. That's the part I don't understand with the 4th quarterback business, right? Like, this Cleveland Browns ain't winning the Super Bowl this year. It's about being able to figure out what these young quarterbacks are or aren't. And Joe Flacco is the pace car, like in NASCAR, right? The pace car sets the tempo, and then it ducks on off, and then all the other cars go. Well, that's what we're waiting for. Whenever the Cleveland Browns decide to take Joe Flacco out of the lineup, or if Mother Nature does that due to an injury, and we're not hoping for that, one of those young guys should be inserted in the starting lineup. It shouldn't be Kenny Pickett. We know who Kenny Pickett is. Kenny Pickett is a failed first-round draft pick for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He played for the Philadelphia Eagles. He's now with the Cleveland Browns. The quarterback battle in training camp that we're talking about with the Browns, yeah, it was two battles happening simultaneously. Joe Flacco and Kenny Pickett for the starting job, Dillon Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders for who would be number 2. Kenny Pickett lost that battle to Joe Flacco. There's no reason to keep him on the roster.
And listen, I don't believe they're going to win the Super Bowl either. Neither does Woody, neither does anybody that covers football that has any damn sense. But the Cleveland Browns don't necessarily believe that. You go out, you sign Myles Garrett to about $40 million a year. Remember, he wanted out because he wanted a chance to compete and literally, legitimately have a chance to compete for in playoff games. That's what he said anyway. Now they went out and they paid him a boatload of money. Maybe that was a negotiating ploy. We understand it. And hell with it. Give him credit. It worked. But in the end, when you look at their personnel on the defensive side of the ball, you look at them, and if somebody can give you some level of production, they could potentially knock off some people. They're not a scrubbed team. The way we talk about Cincinnati Bengals defense, we ain't talking about Cleveland that way. They do have a chance to make some noise if you can get some quarterback play, and I think that's their mentality. And what's wrong with that? I don't see it. That's why I don't have a problem with those 4 quarterbacks being carried.
Woody, break the tie for me here.
Yeah, listen, I would say, number one, it is very rare for an organization to carry 4 quarterbacks, because when you carry 4 quarterbacks, and think about it, a quarterback, you're taking away a guy who's going to be actively playing on the field, whether it's offense, defense, or special teams. So it's just rare. Other thing I would say is you can deal one of these quarterbacks. That's what I would do. Like, yes, you got a plethora of quarterbacks. Deal one of them, get a draft pick. But you gotta somehow, some way, start clearing the quarterback room right now, because it's just too many bodies, not enough reps. You need to figure out who's going to be the backup, and that's proper roster construction that way.
Let's just leave it there. The Browns have not had a Pro Bowl quarterback since 2007. Do we remember who that was? Derek Anderson.
Yeah.
Exactly, the longest active drought in the NFL. We'll leave it there. When we come back here on First Take.
If I said Joe Flacco starting at quarterback for the Browns is the correct move, would you say that's right or wrong?
I think that's the wrong move. I think you should have looked at one of these rookies to see if you had your franchise quarterback in the building, whether it's Shedeur Sanders or Dillon Gabriel, who I felt both had good debuts here in the preseason. You know what Joe Flacco is. Don't make the comfortable, familiar decision. Figure out if one of these young men that you drafted in the 3rd or the 5th round could be the guy.
Dan, I have been saying all along, I have gotten the sense from you, and you were there, that this was never particularly